Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my ranking of the Matrix franchise. 5 films altogether, really. It's 4 theatrical movies, and then there is one, well, it's the Animatrix, basically, which I did want to include on this list because it was released on DVD as a feature. It's a collection of shorts, but they're strung together as a feature, so you can watch them as one complete 102 minutes kind of experience. And I do think that there's a lot of value in there. There's some really good stuff in there, and it is part of the canon. You know, the Wachowskis kind of consider it part of the canon. So here we are. Yeah, but so 5 films really altogether. Kind of. I'm sure it'll rub some people the wrong way, but there you go. You know the drill. We start with the worst, we work our way to the best. So let's get on with it. And number 5 is The Matrix Revolutions. So this was the last part of the original trilogy, and for me, like when it came out, it was a real big disappointment. It's got to be said. I do still like it. Don't get me wrong. By average film standards, it's actually a slight tier above. It's a pretty good action fest. You know, some great special effects, some good payoffs for certain characters, but just given the amount of kind of philosophy and like mind-bending ideas that were all kind of put into Reloaded, particularly before this, the way that Reloaded ended after all that, particularly the sequence with the architect, when Neo visits the architect and they're just throwing ideas at you and you're like, what the hell's this dude saying? And it's just like, yeah, that was quite a taxing sequence to get through mentally, but it set you up for all these kind of big ideas that might be explored further, and that we were going to get more of that. And I don't know, because of that, it felt like there was going to be something just mind-blowingly like revelatory, you know, like just wow. That's the way it felt. And then instead what we got was just this essentially a prolonged action set piece. That's what it feels like. It's like all the character stuff, all the philosophizing, it kind of takes a bit of a back seat to what is just a big shoot 'em up action fest with, you know, a few fight scenes, and it's just like, okay. Felt like you've dumbed down a bit from, you know, in comparison to the first 2 films. And if all you were going to do is essentially just a big final battle at the end, well, you could have just made the Matrix Reloaded a 3-hour movie and condensed a few things down a bit. So yeah, I still enjoy it. You know, if I watch The Matrix, then chances are I will follow it up with the direct sequels, and I will watch this. It's just, as I say, it's a bit disappointing, but still a good film. It is. I like all the Matrix films. I'm a sci-fi geek. I do like them. It's just it was a very high bar that had been set, particularly by the first film, and this doesn't really get there. It doesn't quite reach it. And number 4 is The Animatrix. It came very close to being number 3. It's got to be said. I think it's 50-50 really with this. So I think there was about 8, something like that, 8 short films. Primarily the 2-parter called The Second Renaissance that's in this. It's really the origin story of the Matrix. It tells you how the machines came to be in the position of power that they are, and it's a real fascinating look at the fall of mankind and where we could be heading with, you know, advancements in technology and things like that. It's a really great kind of mini movie. You know, I think once you got both parts together, I think it ends up being like half an hour, 40 minutes long, something like that. But it's really what I consider to be the centerpiece of the Animatrix, because it's the prequel. It's the meat on the bones, so to speak, for fans of that original film, if you want to know how it all came about. And it's just really well handled, very well drawn and whatnot. There's a film on here called Flight of the Osiris, which directly ties in to the Matrix Reloaded, either Reloaded or Revolutions. I can't remember if this was sandwiched between the two or came before Reloaded or whatever. But yeah, it does directly tie in to. I'm pretty sure it's Reloaded, to be honest. So and they did release it at the cinema as well. I remember seeing it at the cinema. I can't remember if that was before. I can't remember if they showed it before Reloaded or whether it was on some other film that Warner Brothers had released or something. But I just remember seeing it on the big screen and thinking, this is pretty cool. Pretty cool having a film as awesome as The Matrix, and now we're getting animated mini movies from it, just that we're seeing at the cinema. It was pretty cool. It's got to be said. There's a few on here that are a bit kind of, like The Kid doesn't really float my boat that much, and a few of them are just kind of like middle of the road, but particularly Second Renaissance makes this collection worth watching. Number 3 is The Matrix Reloaded. This is a film that hasn't aged well from the special effects side of things. I think coming off the back of the original Matrix, obviously, which was a huge success, producer Joel Silver really obviously wanted sequels. You don't have a film like that and making that much money and not want sequels. Problem is, the Wachowskis didn't really want to do sequels. Not at that particular time anyway. And I feel like they were pressured into it, but one of the reasons that they agreed to it, one of the reasons they said yes to doing Reloaded and Revolutions, is that they were able to get it written into their contract that they didn't have to do any publicity for it, which is why you don't see them in any interviews or anything regarding these two films. They had it written into their contract. There you go. Obviously now, knowing what happened, obviously the Wachowskis were both going through some personal things at the time. There's a reason that they didn't want to be tied up into this huge publicity machine that was going to just focus on that and not the movies. So quite wisely, I think, they came back, but only under the condition that they didn't have to do any publicity. The biggest downside of this film is, as I say, they are throwing everything at it as far as ideas go. They've overstuffed themselves, and there's a scene where Neo fights tons and tons of Agent Smiths, and even back then it was a little bit, oh, you're not quite there, are you? You're not quite there at doing people. I think they were just a bit too ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. It's just, if you try it and you pull it off, then that's great. Ambition is rewarded. James Cameron, king of that kind of thing. He has ambition that always looks like it should fall flat on its face, but he always succeeds. Unfortunately, the Wachowskis not so much in this. It's still a very good film. I really enjoy Matrix Reloaded. There's some stuff in it there that kind of like the stuff at Zion when they're all partying, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. Just but there's some nice ideas in there. There's some good bits of philosophy and like religious metaphor, things like that I enjoy. There are some good fight sequences. The freeway chase sequence is pretty good. Obviously they put a lot of money into that, building the freeway itself in order to do it. It's just, once you get into CGI people kicking other CGI people and spinning around on sticks as they kick a bunch, it looks ridiculous. But it is a film I still highly enjoy. Like I said, I just think the more time goes on, the more it ages, I think. Whereas the first one, not so much. First one still holds up. and we'll get to that soon. But first, we will get to my number 2, which is the current film in the franchise that is at cinemas now, which is The Matrix Resurrections. So, yeah, this film is getting ripped to pieces on pretty much all fronts, to be honest. And I don't get it. I really, really don't. I went to see this, and this is going to be one of those movies, I think, that I'm just not in the same boat with most people as. I loved it. Really loved it. Clearly it's in my number 2, so I certainly think it's the best Matrix sequel. I just loved what it did. My biggest gripe is not bringing back Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. I think anyone trying to do Agent Smith is going to fail. It's just sorry, you're not Hugo Weaving. Nobody is. I wish they'd brought Hugo Weaving back. However, I think it's a really great film. It goes through a lot of the same beats as the first film, but in a way that matters. You know, it doesn't feel like they're just, oh yeah, let's get that beat, let's get that bit. Hey, wink, wink, nod, nod. It's taking those things that the first film did. It is repeating them or recycling them, but it's doing so in a way that it kind of means something else. It adds meaning to it that it didn't have previously. And I think, yeah, just the whole, a lot of people are down on the meta kind of side of things, you know, the way it's almost deconstructing the franchise itself, almost poking fun at itself and like, yeah, examining the effect the first film had way back when and all that kind of stuff. I think that's handled pretty well. I think I can see how that kind of thing could come off pretty hokey and could really bring the film down. But I think it's handled in the right way. And I also think that, so Lena Wachowski, who directs this solo now, she's not got Lily with her. She's just gone solo on this. She's gone back to basics, I would say, as basic as you can get with such a huge budget movie. And most of the stuff in this feels like practical effects work. Obviously touched up with CG and things like that, but the emphasis is on the practical with CG around it, rather than, say, like The Matrix Reloaded, where you get just, yeah, swarms of CGI people just in a mess of bendy, weightless CGI-ness. None of that kind of applies to this film, because whenever people are doing something, you can tell that people are doing something, you know, and then they'll put CGI around them to augment that, to prop it up a bit, whereas instead of the other way around. So I feel like that greatly benefits the film. I think a lot of people are down on the fight sequences, saying, it's just, the fight scenes aren't as good. It's like, well, I'll agree they're not quite as good, but I wouldn't say they're appalling. And let's not forget, we're talking about people who are 20 years older than they were when they did the original. They're going to be slower. You know, they're in the 50s now. They're going to be slower. So, yeah, I've got no problem with the action sequences in this. I think some of the sequences are quite breathtaking. I think the special effects work is spot on. It's handled really well. It's not over the top. They don't exceed their grasp, so to speak. And I like the story. I like where it goes. I like that it brings Neo and Trinity onto an even level in many ways, but without bringing one down. You know, I think many people, I reckon, would call this film woke. It's not. It is not woke at all, because what woke does is it puts, say, women on top at the expense of men. You know, it will put black people on top at the expense of white people. It will put gay people on top at the expense of straight people. That's not what this film does. You know, we get a marriage in this film, essentially, between Neo and Trinity. They are equals. They are a partnership. They do this together. They are at their best when they are together. And that's what the film is about. It's, you go back to the original film, it was all about the one. Neo was the one. And actually what this film does is say, no, there isn't the one. It's just, we're all people and we have to come together. And we're actually at our best when we're not the one, but when we're together, working as a team. So I loved that. I thought it was a great message. I think it ends in a way that is very similar to the first film, which means you can go more sequel route, more sequels route, but you don't have to. And in many ways, I kind of wish the original didn't, but it did. And I think in many ways, this film has salvaged that original ending by in some way taking us back there. So we're in a very similar position, but not the same position. Because as I say, even though it retreads old ground, it adds something. And in this particular instance, what it adds is that weight of having Neo and Trinity both together on equal footing, as a partnership, and it's just, yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really great. I don't get the criticism, I really don't. This film is currently sitting in my top 10 of 2021. I got a lot of movies to catch up on before I do my Lomax Movie Awards, so I have no doubt this probably won't be in my top 10 by the time I do my Lomax Movie Awards. But for now, out of the 40 odd movies I saw in 2021, it's in my top 10, and I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to it coming out on Blu-ray so I can buy it and watch it again and again and again. So yeah, there you go. Positive review for The Matrix Resurrections, and I will stand by that opinion for many years to come. But of course, that means that my number one, as if there was any doubt, is the original The Matrix from 1999, the film that kind of snuck in under the radar and stole all the thunder that The Phantom Menace had to give. Yeah, nobody saw this film coming at all. First I ever heard about it was a 5-star review in Empire magazine. Came out of nowhere. I'm like, is that a misprint? Keanu Reeves has got a sci-fi movie out with a 5-star review. That's got to be a misprint. It was enough to intrigue me. I went to watch it expecting nothing. Even from the review, I didn't really get a true sense of what I was going to get from this film, and it just blew me away. I saw it 3 times at the cinema. It was fantastic. It still holds up, again, like I say, because mostly it is practical effects that are, I'm not denying that there is tons of CGI in there, don't get me wrong, but it's built upon practical work. The practical work is done first. That is the main kind of body, and then you build the CGI stuff around it, and that's what they do here. I think they lost a lot of that in the sequels, and that affected their quality somewhat. But no, it works really well here. The cinematography is beautiful, although it's beautifully dark. It's dark, it's dank, it's quite depressing, but in a beautiful way. The characters are cool. Trinity is great. Neo is great. I really love Lawrence Fishburne as the mentor kind of character, bringing him through. And it's got one of the best villains in cinema history in Agent Smith. Again, thanks to Hugo Weaving. It's Weaving's performance that makes this guy Smith such a great villain. So yeah, it's just an absolute classic. The creation of bullet time. It's one of those things that just made ripples. Every now and again, there's a film that comes out and it makes ripples that reverberate through every other movie that comes out around that time. Loads of movies were doing bullet time all of a sudden, Swordfish, movies like that. Yeah, it was a game changer, and it just happens to be a game changer that has held up. You watch it now, and it still feels as fresh as it did back then, if not more so. And just as relevant, if not more so. You look at the themes that this film deals with, the world we live in, the way it feels like a prison, the way that, if you look at governments these days, and just the way that media has come on. I think a lot of us do feel trapped in our devices and things like that. It's just, yeah, it is a film that is asking for a wake up, that is saying, you know, like, there's got to be more to life than this. So yeah, lots of philosophical stuff in there. I just, yeah, I love it. It's one of the best films ever made. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And yeah, there you go. It's my number one, obviously. But that is my ranking. What is yours? Please leave your ranking down below. Let me know how you would rank this franchise. Feel free to include the Animatrix or not. It's up to you. But yeah, thank you for watching. And until next time, cracking.